Hello, I'm Arlene Lemus, the CEO of Pay Prevention, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of our podcast, Disrupting the Dominoes. And that's disrupting the dominoes of violence. And I'm very excited about our guest today because what an incredible story that you'll be hearing today. And really assist her through the movement of empowerment self-defense of our movement. So we're very fortunate to have a writer, a public speaker, an artist, a safety program facilitator, and really just super empowering and inspiring person. So please welcome to our show today, Krista Hanley. Krista, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Great. And please share with our listeners and our viewers, where are you at? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then I have a few questions that I'm dying to ask.
All right. Great. I'm currently live in Lakewood, Colorado, which is just outside of Denver. A little bit about me. I have been teaching self-defense work since about 2012, 2013, when I started volunteering for a local impact organization and slowly worked my way to becoming a certified instructor. And then in 2020, just before the pandemic, I became program director. And then just recently, a colleague of mine, Kayla Berry, and I decided to start our own organization teaching safety skills and self-defense. So we wanted to expand what it meant to work on this work that we all do. And our organization is called We Are Safer Together.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to back up a little bit just for our listeners and our viewers here, because I think we're very comfortable in our movement. So share a little bit about what impact is and what your idea of self-defense is, because I think it's when people normally hear those words self-defense, they immediately think of martial arts or gun safety or different things. So could you share to me what your view of self-defense is and give us a little more information on impact?
Yes. I think that my idea of what self-defense is very broad, and it is ever increasing and broadening what it means to what self-defense means. Self-defense could be anything from, again, defending yourself physically from attack, but self-defense is also like saying you have food allergies at a restaurant. Self-defense is also setting a boundary with the person that you live with that says, "Hey, could you not talk to me for the first hour after I get home from work? I really need some quiet time." Self-defense can be such a huge variety of things. And that's really what we're trying to do is really show people that self-defense is not just people come to our classes and they think they're going to learn how to flip people over and, and do those big martial arts moves and stuff. And that's really actually to me not self-defense. Self-defense is things that protect you and your safety. And that includes your mental health as well. So then to talk a little bit about impact, although now we're getting away from impact as an organization, Kayla and I, but when I started, impact actually really helped me through my trauma. I have a history of trauma. I'm a mass shooting survivor, and a lot of my trauma, I think, was stuck in my body. I wasn't having success with talk therapy, helping with my anxiety. I wasn't having success with a lot of other modalities. And then I took an impact class. Actually, my first class was in Santa Fe with the impact chapter that's in Santa Fe, and it it really changed my life. I took
Mm,
that class, and then I took every class that I could after that.
okay.
And what I found is that learning how to fight, learning how to use my voice, learning about boundaries, it all helped process and move that trauma and made me feel more powerful and more capable than I ever felt before. So the impact model is full force self-defense that uses padded, suited instructors. And they have a very layered system of instructing that helps people learn how to fight full force in realistic role play scenarios.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. The impact model, which originally I think was called model mugging, and then has morphed into impact and then some offshoots of each. I think it's very powerful. And I've not heard one person who's gone through that program that hasn't felt that they were transformed, empowered, and emboldened. Yeah, incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Again, a lot of people in our movement, of course, know what we're talking about, but for people who are listening who are not in the empowerment self-defense world, we wanted to share that with them. And then just talk to you a little bit about what PAVE does and how we are doing it and how we're moving into the corporate and organizational institutional space. And we've had to look at what self-defense is as well and really frame it in a way and really choose our words wisely so that they land a certain way to get people to understand what we are trying to impart and why we think it's so important to change work culture, institutional culture around safety. So we stay away from the word self-defense. We present this as human safety skills and that everybody has the right to feel safe anywhere they are in this world at any time and every time. That's how PAVE maneuvers that conversation.
I find it interesting that we also have been with We Are Safer Together, we've been shifting the way we talk about self defense because I feel like we need another word to
Right.
describe what we do because self defense has a lot of connotations to it that aren't necessarily what we do in the empowerment self defense world. And it's frustrating to have that sort of preconception when you
Yep.
come in and you try to tell people what you do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Thank you. For me as a martial artist all my life, I'm completely comfortable having those kind of discussions as well, just within the martial arts realm. If I had a dollar for every time someone put up their hands and they stood on one foot and did the Ralph Macchio Kung Fu Karate Kid pose to me, people have so many misconceptions even about martial arts. But yeah, I'd be a wealthy person if I had a dollar for every time someone did that to me. So yeah, but it is important that we in our movement and the world outside of our movement, that we find the words and we find the presentation and the messaging to present it better, to present it so it lands better because we are doing incredible work. We know that the movement of empowerment self-defense is doing incredible work. If it needs a tweak, then so be it. We tweak it, we change the name or whatever it needs to be to get it to the most amount of people.
Yes.
So you touched upon something when you shared a little bit of background on yourself, and I would, to the point of you being as comfortable as you can be here. Please know that. When I heard that you're a survivor of the Columbine shooting, and I'll apologize, I wanted to come and talk to you about it immediately, and I never ever really found that space for me to be able to bridge this conversation. So I'm not excited about this, but it's been on my heart since first meeting you. So I'm glad we have this opportunity to also share it. So if you could share anything that you'd like to share about that experience, I'd appreciate it.
Of course. I'm happy to share about my experience. I shouldn't think that telling our stories is really important and that we live in a world in which I think sometimes we feel silenced. And that's definitely was
Mm,
an experience that I had. And I really believe that we all deserve to have space to tell our stories. And that's why I really appreciate you bringing it up. So when the shooting happened, I was 17. I was a junior at Columbine. And I was in the cafeteria that day with hundreds of other people, maybe close to 1,000 people. It was a big school. And someone ran through the cafeteria yelling for us to get down, which at that time in 1999, we didn't know immediately what was happening. We got down on the ground. I was with a couple friends of mine. And for a few minutes, we were there on the ground, not knowing what was happening, wondering if it was some sort of prank. It was spring. There was graduating seniors who were doing sort of crazy things, pranks and stuff. So that's what I thought it was. And that also was probably a big part of denial. We did we didn't know what was happening then. After we got down on the ground, something shifted, something happened where everyone in the cafeteria ran out to the opposite end of the room and tried to get out of the room. There was probably something happened outside. I still don't know exactly what that catalyst was, but I've watched the videos of there's a video of the cafeteria footage. And it was just this moment I will never get out of my mind where everyone got up from the floor and just ran. And my friends and I, we like scooted behind this other hallway into this other hallway. And then a door opened in this hallway, and we made our way into the school auditorium, which is in the center of the school. From there, we went up to the second floor and then out to the side of the school in this not used area, not area that I had, that was like a regular evacuation area for fire drills or anything. And then we were told to keep going. Clearly, some of the administrators and teachers with us knew that something bad was happening, and they told us to climb this fence. We climbed the fence and then ended up in this park that was next to the school. And then I'm not even sure how long we were in this park, but more and more students kept coming out of the school. And immediately there were talk of people with guns, people with black coats with guns on. And then we heard sirens, and really that's when that reality sort of hit of this is not a normal school day. I will not be going back to school this day. And my mom was a teacher at the local middle school that fed into Columbine, so she was in lockdown. She couldn't leave. My dad was a carpenter, construction worker, and this was the age before cell phones. And so I couldn't call really. It's not like I could call and be like, "Come and pick me up." So I ended up with some friends, and we were able to get a hold of one of the parents, and he gave me a ride home, and then I ended up at home alone for that day watching TV and watching this live unfolding of what was happening at my school, along with sort of the rest of the world.
Yeah. It really was a day that changed everything. I remember it very clearly. It changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it did, and it changed my life. I think that's something I was in denial about as well, as that there's this narrative of healing of,
Mm.
"Oh, you do enough therapy, you do enough proactive things, and you will get over it, and life will go back to normal." And it took me years to realize that life doesn't go back to normal after this kind of trauma, and that there's this new normal. And then I definitely think that is exacerbated by the continuation of mass shootings and how that affects all of us who are shooting survivors. Every single subsequent shooting puts us right back to our trauma.
Thank you for sharing that. The statement sorry that you had to deal with that is not enough, but I I'm sorry that happened. So one of the things that PAVE talks about is, of course, we want to impart skills that people are able to disrupt or react to mitigate a situation in real time, right? To stop something from happening, whether that be as a bystander that hears an off cuff racist or sexist comment, or whether that be a full blown physical event. So we try to teach that. We try to teach to heal from an event. And when we have these discussions with corporations, we talk to them about, yes, there are things happening in your office. I think you need to leave space or have a conversation around what trauma your employees are bringing in with them every day, things that we don't know about. If you were to walk into the office, it may not be a conversation. If there is a mass shooting 2 weeks later and you are not firing on all cylinders, you are not at your best, there needs to be a place where you can express that and say, hey, I just need to let you, this is where I'm at. And 40% is going to be my 100 today. And then have conversations around that. I think it's not acknowledged, it's not recognized that if a young person who's working has lost 3 family members to gun violence, and then there's gun violence that's all over the news the morning before or the morning of, he may need some time. He may need a different approach. He may need less interaction, more interaction. We don't know, but we need to start having those conversations because violence is happening. It's happening every day. It's impacting us every day. And I always have to do this. Violence, defined by OSHA, is from microaggressions, bullying, toxicity, all the way through physical events, active shooter events. So it covers that whole spectrum. We are impacted by violence every day. So this component of healing from, or at least acknowledging that trauma is being brought in by our employees and coworkers, it needs to be something front and center.
I fully agree with that. And I definitely have a history of working for people where, again, that sort of the impulse, especially early in my trauma, was to not tell anyone because you don't want that attention in a negative way. You don't want your employer to say, oh, you're sensitive, or oh, you can't do your work fully because you have this trauma. And so always didn't tell people, coworkers, my employers, what my trauma was. And that was probably to the detriment of all of us. And then when I did tell and when I did disclose, I don't know that I was empowered to take care of myself in the ways that I would hope that as an employer, like that I would empower someone with trauma to take care of themselves or to offer resources. I never was offered resources to support my trauma. And even as there were subsequent shootings in the state, in Colorado, there was never a space for me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm so appreciative that you're trying to change this culture.
Yes, yes,
Culture of violence,
exactly.
culture of you've got to toughen up and do your job. Let's change this culture.
Yeah. And we try to have conversations around you're checking, you know that you have an issue with absenteeism, you have an issue with tardiness, you have it, but you're not even registering the lack of being present. How many times are people coming? They're showing up, they're sitting at their desk, but because they're inundated and struggling with this trauma that may be happening in work, may be coming from outside of work, maybe past, that we're not even acknowledging that. There's not even a stat for that. They're not even following that. So there are billions and billions of dollars lost because we're not acknowledging this in the way we should.
Or making helping people feel safe. What productivity is lost? Because people like me are sitting in their office going, "What if something happened here?" And I don't feel like I have the tools or the training or the preparedness. I don't trust that this place will actually be a safe place for me.
Yeah. We can't do anything if we don't feel safe, Krista. We can't learn things. We can't be productive. We can't be great in a great partner. We can't be a great teacher if we don't feel safe. It's in the pyramid of needs, right?
Yeah.
We need food, shelter, and water. And then that next tier is safety. But
Yes.
it's like we don't get it. Like we don't want to acknowledge that that's what we need.
Oh, it's true. And I don't know. I wonder why it feels so daunting for employers. I have this story about one of the past places that I worked where I went to them, finally got the courage to say, "Hey, I would appreciate some active shooter training." We didn't have any active shooter training. And there had been incidences at this workplace that made me nervous. And there was currently someone that a coworker of mine had a restraining order
Mm.
against someone. And I was like, gosh, we are in this state where there could be a threat. And I would appreciate some active shooter training. And I brought up the courage to talk to my boss about that. And you know what their solution was? It was to give all of the women pepper spray. They gave all of the women employees pepper spray. That was their solution for me
Mhm.
going to them and saying, I would appreciate some active shooter training at this workplace and some thoughtful policy around incidences.
Wow. I don't even know
When
what
I
to
just
say to
found it
that.
out, that wasn't enough.
I don't even know what to say to that. There is this as PAVE continues to grow and we have more conversations with different sectors of when I sectors, I mean the hospitality sector and the healthcare sector, which violence in those workplaces are daily, sometimes multiple times a day. It is this response of, yes, we know it's happening. We know it's impacting our business, it's impacting our bottom line, but we can't say that we have a violence problem. Call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. Just have a solution or start looking for a solution. It's it's this weird dynamic as you've shared. You don't understand why it's let's just address the elephant in the room. It's impacting us all. But we're pushing there. We're pushing the envelope there to have these conversations.
Yes.
So you touched upon a little bit of your journey towards healing and that it wasn't as step by step as people somehow some that might imply that it is or insinuate that it is. So it's just if you do take these 10 steps, you'll be okay. Please, if you don't mind, share a little bit of your journey towards healing.
Yeah. Like you said, it's not like a it's not like a path that I could illustrate for you, but I can tell you that the things that helped. And early on in college, after after going through the shooting, I finished out high school. I had one more year left, and then I went to college. And in college, I found yoga, and it was again, it was something I had never done. I didn't really know about it, but a friend of mine took me to a yoga class on campus, and again, that body based therapy. I feel like I had such high anxiety, just undiagnosed anxiety after Columbine, because I wasn't seeking mental health. There was such a stigma against that. Those of you can remember back in the 90s and 2000s, not everybody talked about going to therapy the way I think it's very open now. And so I found yoga, and I feel like the only time in my week where I could actually breathe was in my yoga classes. And so that was one thing that really helped me. The other thing was art. I went to school for photography. I really just dug into my art practices. And the reason I went to school for photography was again, like after the shooting, I was like, I have to decide what I'm doing when I'm going to college. And I could not make that decision.
Mm,
But I was like, what do I like to do and what makes me feel better? And it is doing art. And so that's what I ended up going to school for because I couldn't make any other decision about it. And it was, of course, it was the right decision for me at the time. But now sometimes I'm like, why did I do that? Like I could have gotten some sort of like engineering degree or something that would have made me money. But instead, I focused on art. And it also helped through that process. And then many years later, I went back to writing. I had always been a writer as a young person, and then I lost my writing practice through the trauma. And I returned to the writing and I started writing about Columbine, around my experiences, about what happened that day and after, about my memories from before. And writing about the experience also was such a cathartic part of the process that I was able to really process things, I think, again, that were stuck, that I had been stuck on.
yeah, it's fascinating all the different parts that are keeping you on your journey towards healing. One of the most, for me, one of the most rewarding relationships and friendships that have come out of PAVE for me is what with Dr. Mary Clyde Pierce was emergency pediatric doctor, but is also doing tons of research in what happens to us when we are abused, mostly in children, what epigenetic switches turned off, as she describes it. They get turned off during trauma or abuse or a traumatic event. And then how we flip those epigenetic switches to work again. And one of the best descriptions that she uses is she says, we hear people all the time say, well, music saved my life. Art saved my life. Writing saved my life. Basketball saved my life. All of those things have a physical component to them, right? And it's something that we're controlling, that we have a little bit of control over. And this is why I think empowerment self-defense or human safety skills training or your safety classes that you're promoting, why they flip those epigenetic switches. And we're working on research that shows that in particular on this, the work that we're doing. But that's what I think is happening. If we don't, if we don't restart our resilience muscle, and I think that comes from epigenetic switches that have just dulled from trauma, we can't heal. We need something that flips those. You found that initially in yoga, and you found it again in art. Now all those epigenetic switches are flipping back on and bringing you to where you are today. Dr. Mary Clyde Pierce's research has just been fascinating to me. You touched through your healing journey here, and now you're in the public safety space. So how does that, please share that connection and what you're doing with that space now?
It's interesting. Lately I've been on this sort of quest where I've been like, okay, I've got this art background, I have writing, and then I have self-defense. How can I connect them? Because they feel very separate. Like maybe art and writing you can put under the creativity bucket, but self-defense for me was always something that felt almost discordant in the way that I was pursuing my career, pursuing opportunities in life, and it was something that I always returned to. And I think because self-defense gave me my voice again.
Mm.
And that voice is what I had lost in the trauma, and that voice is also our creative impulse. I feel like that those things are so connected. And I have this moment in one of my early impact classes where I had this instructor working on me to practice a strike. And I was practicing this strike with this instructor, and he was saying, "I can't hear you." And I didn't have a voice, literally
Mm.
didn't have the voice. And finally, I just screamed, just unleashed at him because he had pushed that button
Mm.
enough. And I unleashed this no that was so loud that everyone in the room, in this whole class, everyone stopped and they all turned and they all applauded because
Mm.
nobody in that room had heard me before. And that is the moment that I look back of that was when self-defense shifted
For you. Yeah.
everything for me. And it shifted that creative impulse because I found my voice again. And in the safety realm, Kayla and I really believe that we can be creative and we can teach safety. And we can do these things in a trauma informed, adaptive, and inclusive way. That self defense, safety, skills to protect yourself don't just belong in cisgender, able
Mm.
bodied white bodies, that they belong in everyone. And that, again, this is where the concept of self defense isn't doesn't serve us because people picture a certain type of body, a certain type of person, a certain type of privilege that can protect themselves. We believe that everyone deserves these skills.
Mm.
Everyone has the right to them. And beyond that, it's about building community safety. I can have all the skills in the world to fight and protect myself, but if my community isn't a community that is safe, where I feel like there'll be bystanders who will help me if I need help, where I feel like that I can walk down the street, park my car, and walk to my home at night. Like, all of this stuff doesn't mean that I'm safe.
Yeah.
And so we need to work on how do we create communities that are safe and communities that are inclusive and communities that have these these elements where everyone is working together to create safety.
Yeah. I'm My gut tells me you've read Diane Rosenfeld's The Bonobo Sisterhood book that talks about really this collective approach to self-defense, collective approach to stopping violence. Literally, you give out bonobo primates give out one little yell and hundreds come to support, and whatever is happening is immediately de-escalated because there's such a sisterhood there. I will challenge you, and I'm challenging everyone in our community to really start having these conversations and framing them as a public safety component. This is a public safety movement. It's no longer an empowerment self-defense movement. This is a public safety movement. And what I mean by that is because violence against women is by many different organizations within the federal government and outside the federal government a epidemic. Okay. And then you have violence against children. It's an epidemic. It's already framed like that. It is widespread. And then you have the violence in the workplace, just the most recently being tapped as an epidemic as well, and the impact that it's having in the workplace. This is a public safety issue. We are addressing a public safety problem. And I thank you for that. And I just challenge you to frame that in your discussions that you're having with people like, hey, this is a public safety number one issue.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that
Mm,
language. I think sometimes we struggle with language because again, it is such a body-based practice, right?
yep.
It is so based in our bodies, and we know what it's like to be in that room to teach people how to use their voice, teach people how to fight, and we know that transformation. We can see it, but describing it and describing the importance of what we do is sometimes I think a lot of us struggle with that,
Yeah.
make that connection and to
Yep.
sell it as something that is worthy of, we deserve to get paid for the work that we do and the expertise that we show in this realm. Like it's
Yes.
not something that is, unless like someone was like giving us all grants to do this work, it's not something we should be volunteering to do. We have a level of expertise that deserves to be recognized.
Compensated. Yeah. To be compensated. Yeah. I think that so many of us in the movement, our lives have been changed by this training and by these interactions. And so we just want from our heart, we're an empathetic group, and we want from our heart to give this skill set to as many people as we possibly can. But you are right. We are not, this is not a fringe. We're not, this isn't something that's minor that we're imparting. This is major, life changing, public safety, human development issues. We are changing lives. And I think, to your point, we need to be compensated accordingly. And it's going to come in our messaging, it's going to come in our framing, and really shaping our message around what are we really doing? How are we really doing it? And being very clear that we're different from everything else. And we are. So I think that's important. So the last couple questions I have is one is please share a little bit about your book. I'd love to hear a little bit about it, and I'm sure our listeners and our viewers would like to hear as well.
Yes, I've written a book about my experiences with Columbine. It's called How to Survive a Mass Shooting, and it's a memoir. And currently, I'm trying to find a publisher. It's been an interesting journey of this publishing process. I've actually
Mm,
found that I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping that's happening and a lot of silencing. I keep getting told that people are interested in gun books or in these kinds of gun trauma memoirs. And I know that's not true because everyone I talk to about my book
mm,
is interested in reading it.
yeah.
So hopefully it gets published soon. I'm still on this journey of trying to find publication, but the book is about my journey of trying to find hope and trying to find some resilience after this experience and going through the trauma of that day and the subsequent sort of layers of trauma. And then a big part of the book is again refinding my voice, refinding my creativity, and how those things can help us put ourselves back together after something.
Maybe some of our listeners and viewers will hear something and have some tips to reach out to you with on how to get that very important work published. Because I do believe it's important that your voice is heard more than the circles that you're in right now.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I think that you have co-founded a new organization. You touched upon it a little bit earlier. Please share with our viewers and listeners what that organization is, what it's doing, how they can contact you.
Thank you. Yeah, the organization is called We Are Safer Together, and I co-founded it with Kayla Berry. She and I again met through this world, and we are so excited to be doing this important work and doing it in the way that we really feel like is our vision, our voices. We Are Safer Together teaches adaptive, trauma informed, and inclusive public safety practices
Stephen.
that could
Right.
include self defense, but it also includes things like communication skills, boundary setting, de escalation, bystander intervention. We also do safety consultations for businesses where we go in and we, from the bottom up, help develop safety plans and things. We also teach a trauma-informed active shooter training that I have developed. All too often, active shooter trainings consider, like you said, that employees may be coming into the workplace with trauma. Active shooter trainings are often re-traumatizing or traumatizing in and of themselves. And the other thing active shooter trainings do is they are not experiential. Oftentimes it is watching a video or watching a slideshow, or the experiential ones are
Yeah.
really scary. And I don't think we need to do either of those things. I think we can help people move through what they would do, and we don't have to terrify them in that. So we've developed this trauma-informed active shooter training. Right now, we are located in Colorado. We cover all of Colorado, and we are willing to travel and do anything in our region as well.
Great. Thank you for that, Krista. And I wish you the best of luck with that organization. Every person that comes on the podcast, I ask them this kind of closing question. And the question is, if you could have the company, the audience of one person or a few people or a group, I'll say, that could, if you got in front of them, it would change everything. So if you could have a conversation around public safety and creating safer spaces, you could have that conversation with someone. Who would it be? Who would you want to talk to?
I would want to talk to the people in power. I would want to talk to our senators, our president, our vice president. I think that they are so too intellectually aware of this and not personally aware. And I think that, again, the more we talk to them, the more we tell stories, the more we share the transformational work that we do with the people in power, maybe the more that it can be recognized as something that can shift our culture. Because, again, after 25 years now, after Columbine, we are still in a mass shooting pandemic. We are
Yeah.
still facing this everyday gun violence that is deeply affecting individuals, communities, schools. And we haven't caught on yet that this is not okay and that it actually needs to stop. And I think only when we somehow have to convince the people in power who can actually do something or provide funding toward these public safety mechanisms. I think that's one of our biggest issues is funding in this realm.
Yeah.
We could train so many people to do this work. We could train so many trainers. We could spread this out so much more if we just could make a living doing it. And we should be able to. But like we need more support. We need more people to recognize it.
Thank you
Who
for
would you
that.
talk to?
We've gone, it depends on the day. I need to get in front of Anita Hill. If I could just speak to Anita Hill, or if I could just get in front of Michelle Obama, or if I could just talk to your epidemic of school shootings, if I could just sat with the brave young people after the Florida shooting, the school shooting, they just were so charged and so energetic and so focused and so articulate into what they were doing. If I could just corral them so it's varied for me. I definitely feel that this generation coming up they just don't take the same things that we took. So I am hopeful that this generation will move us forward, more forward than we could ever have moved us. Yeah. I'm energized by young people right now.
Me too. Yeah. They're so amazing to work with. And I work with young people and I go, gosh, I wish I would have had this fire. I wish I
Yeah.
would have had this knowledge that they do. And I don't know why I didn't, except for that complacency that was allowed with violence. And let's not be complacent anymore.
Krista, best of luck on your book. Best of luck on your new organization. Come back and talk to us about what's going on with us. We wish you the best of luck with We Are Safer Together, your new organization. To our listeners and our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Again, this has been another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes. That's Disrupting the Dominoes of Violence. And please subscribe, click and join us, share this episode, and we wish you all the best and stay safe.